Metaphysics is a traditional branch of philosophy concerned with explaining the fundamental nature of being and the world that encompasses it, although the term is not easily defined. Traditionally, metaphysics attempts to answer two basic questions in the broadest possible terms. Ultimately, what is there? What is it like? A person who studies metaphysics is called a metaphysicist or a metaphysician. The metaphysicist attempts to clarify the fundamental notions by which people understand the world, e.g., existence, objects and the properties, space and time, cause and effect, and possibility. A central branch of metaphysics is ontology, the investigation into the basic categories of being and how they relate to each other. Another central branch of metaphysics is cosmology, the study of the origin, fundamental structure, nature, and dynamics of the universe. Some include epistemology as another central focus of metaphysics, but others question this. Prior to the modern history of science, scientific questions were addressed as a part of metaphysics known as natural philosophy. Originally, the term science simply meant knowledge. The scientific method, however, transformed natural philosophy into an empirical activity deriving from experiment unlike the rest of philosophy. By the end of the 18th century, it had begun to be called science, to distinguish it from philosophy. Thereafter, metaphysics denoted philosophical inquiry of a non-empirical character into the nature of existence. Some philosophers of science, such as the neo-positivists, say that natural science rejects the study of metaphysics, while other philosophers of science strongly disagree. Etymology. The word metaphysics derives from the Greek words mu epsilon tau alpha and phi upsilon sigma iota kappa alpha. It was first used as the title for several of Aristotle's works, because they were usually anthologized after the works on physics in complete editions. The prefix meta indicates that these works come after the chapters on physics. However, Aristotle himself did not call the subject of these books metaphysics. He referred to it as first philosophy. The editor of Aristotle's works, Andronicus of Rhodes, is thought to have placed the books on first philosophy right after another work, Physics, and called them tau mu epsilon tau tau phi epsilon sigma iota kappa beta iota beta lambda iota alpha, or the books that come after the books on physics. This was misread by Latin scholiasts, who thought it meant the science of what is beyond the physical. However, once the name was given, the commentators sought to find intrinsic reasons for its appropriateness. For instance, it was understood to mean the science of the world beyond nature, that is, the science of the immaterial. Again, it was understood to refer to the chronological or pedagogical order among our philosophical studies, so that the metaphysical sciences would mean those that we study after having mastered the sciences that deal with the physical world. There is a widespread use of the term in current popular literature which replicates this understanding, i.e., that the metaphysical equates to the non-physical. Thus, metaphysical healing means healing by means of remedies that are not physical. Central questions. Cosmology and cosmogony. Metaphysical cosmology is the branch of metaphysics that deals with the world as the totality of all phenomena in space and time. Historically, it has had quite a broad scope, and in many cases was founded in religion. The ancient Greeks drew no distinction between this use and the model for the cosmos. However, in modern times it addresses questions about the universe which are beyond the scope of the physical sciences. It is distinguished from religious cosmology in that it approaches these questions using philosophical methods. Cosmogony deals specifically with the origin of the universe. Modern metaphysical cosmology and cosmogony try to address questions such as: what is the origin of the universe? What is its first cause? Is its existence necessary? What are the ultimate material components of the universe? What is the ultimate reason for the existence of the universe? Does the cosmos have a purpose? Determinism and free will. Determinism is the philosophical proposition that every event, including human cognition, decision and action, is causally determined by an unbroken chain of prior occurrences. It holds that nothing happens that has not already been determined. The principal consequence of the deterministic claim is that it poses a challenge to the existence of free will. The problem of free will is the problem of whether rational agents exercise control over their own actions and decisions. Addressing this problem requires understanding the relation between freedom and causation, and determining whether the laws of nature are causally deterministic. Some philosophers, known as incompatibilists, view determinism and free will as mutually exclusive. If they believe in determinism, they will therefore believe free will to be an illusion, a position known as hard determinism. Proponents range from Baruch Spinoza to Ted Hondrich. Others, labeled compatibilists, believe that the two ideas can be reconciled coherently. Adherents of this view include Thomas Hobbes and many modern philosophers such as John Martin Fisher. Incompatibilists who accept free will but reject determinism are called libertarians, a term not to be confused with the political sense. Robert Kane and Alvin Plantinga are modern defenders of this theory. Identity and change. The Greeks took some extreme positions on the nature of change. Parmenides denied that change occurs at all, while Heraclitus thought change was ubiquitous. Why? Thou cannot step into the same river twice. Identity, sometimes called numerical identity, is the relation that a thing bears to itself, and which no thing bears to anything other than itself. According to Leibniz, if some object X is identical to some object Y, then any property that X has, Y will have as well. However, it seems, too, that objects can change over time. If one were to look at a tree one day, and the tree later lost a leaf, it would seem that one could still be looking at that same tree. Two rival theories to account for the relationship between change and identity are perdurantism, which treats the tree as a series of tree stages, and endurantism, which maintains that the tree, the same tree, is present at every stage in its history. Mind and matter. The nature of matter was a problem in its own right in early philosophy. Aristotle himself introduced the idea of matter in general to the Western world, adapting the term pile, which originally meant lumber. Early debates centered on identifying a single underlying principle. Water was claimed by Thales, air by Anaximenes, apion by Anaximander, fire by Heraclitus. Democritus, in conjunction with his mentor, Leucippus, conceived of an atomic theory many centuries before it was accepted by modern science. It is worth noting, however, that the grounds necessary to ensure validity to the proposed theory's veridical nature were not scientific, but just as philosophical as those traditions espoused by Thales and Anaximander. The nature of the mind in its relation to the body has been seen as more of a problem as science has progressed in its mechanistic understanding of the brain and body. Proposed solutions often have ramifications about the nature of mind as a whole. René Descartes proposed substance dualism, a theory in which mind and body are essentially different, with the mind having some of the attributes traditionally assigned to the soul. In the 17th century, this creates a conceptual puzzle about how the two interact. Evidence of a close relationship between brain and mind, such as the Phineas Gage case, have made this form of dualism increasingly unpopular. Another proposal discussing the mind-body problem is idealism, in which the material is sweepingly eliminated in favor of the mental. Idealists, such as George Berkeley, claim that material objects do not exist unless perceived and only as perceptions. The German idealists, such as Fichte, Hegel and Schopenhauer, took Kant as their starting point, although it is debatable how much of an idealist Kant himself was. Idealism is also a common theme in Eastern philosophy. Related ideas are panpsychism and panexperientialism, which say everything has a mind rather than everything exists in a mind. Alfred North Whitehead was a 20th-century exponent of this approach. Idealism is a monistic theory which holds that there is a single universal substance or principle. Neutral monism, associated in different forms with Baruch Spinoza and Bertrand Russell, seeks to be less extreme than idealism, and to avoid the problems of substance dualism. It claims that existence consists of a single substance that in itself is neither mental nor physical, but is capable of mental and physical aspects or attributes. Thus, it implies a dual-aspect theory. For the last 100 years, the dominant metaphysics has without a doubt been materialistic monism, type identity theory, token identity theory, functionalism, reductive physicalism, non-reductive physicalism, eliminative materialism, anomalous monism, property dualism, epiphenomenalism and emergence are just some of the candidates for a scientifically informed account of the mind. Prominent recent philosophers of mind include David Armstrong, Ned Block, David Chalmers, Patricia and Paul Churchland, Donald Davidson, Daniel Dennett, Fred Dretzker, Douglas Hofstadter, Jerry Fedor, David Lewis, Thomas Nagel, Hilary Putnam, John Searle, John Smart, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and Fred Alan Wolf. Necessity and possibility metaphysicists investigate questions about the ways the world could have been. David Lewis, in On the Plurality of Worlds, endorsed a view called concrete modal realism, according to which facts about how things could have been are made true by other concrete worlds, just as in ours, in which things are different. Other philosophers, such as Gottfried Leibniz, have dealt with the idea of possible worlds as well. The idea of necessity is that in any necessary fact is true across all possible worlds. A possible fact is true in some possible world, even if not in the actual world. For example, it is possible that cats could have had two tails, or that any particular apple could have not existed. By contrast, certain propositions seem necessarily true, such as analytic propositions, e.g., all bachelors are unmarried. The particular example of analytic truth being necessary is not universally held among philosophers. A less controversial view might be that self-identity is necessary, as it seems fundamentally incoherent to claim that for any x, it is not identical to itself. This is known as the law of identity, a putative first principle. Aristotle describes the principle of non-contradiction. It is impossible that the same quality should both belong and not belong to the same thing. This is the most certain of all principles. Wherefore they who demonstrate refer to this as an ultimate opinion, for it is by nature the source of all the other axioms. Religion and spirituality. Theology is the study of a god or gods and the nature of the divine, whether there is a god, many gods or no gods, or whether it is unknown or unknowable whether any gods exist, and whether a divine entity directly intervenes in the world, or its sole function is to be the first cause of the universe. These and whether a god or gods in the world are different, or are identical, are some of the primary metaphysical questions concerning philosophy of religion. Within the standard Western philosophical tradition, theology reached its peak under the medieval school of thought known as Scholasticism, which focused primarily on the metaphysical aspects of Christianity. The work of the scholastics is still an integral part of modern philosophy, with key figures such as Thomas Aquinas still playing an important role in the philosophy of religion. The nature of metaphysics. Some philosophers, such as Amy Thomason, have argued that many metaphysical questions can be dissolved just by looking at the way we use words. Others, such as Ted Sider, have argued that metaphysical questions are substantive, and that we can make progress toward answering them by comparing theories according to a range of theoretical virtues inspired by the sciences, such as simplicity and explanatory power.